Since its release in 2000 on the Nintendo 64, Banjo Tooie has become one of the most popular and beloved collectathon games. The game built upon its predecessor, Banjo Kazooie, the game released only 2 years earlier, and jam-packed it with more content and gameplay. So much that in a normal run, Banjo Tooie can take around 17 hours to complete, and up to around 24 hours if striving for 100% completion. But there's a small group of players who approach games differently, a group of players looking to see how quickly games can be beaten. They are known as speedrunners, and in the case of Banjo Tooie, they have found a way to beat the game in less than 30 minutes. With the use of skips, glitches, and other game-breaking techniques, these players are able to beat the game while avoiding almost all the game's content. And over the years, these players have grinded to beat the game in the fastest possible time. And on July 9th, 2024, a runner known as Haig beat Banjo Tooie in 26 minutes and 57 seconds, claiming the world record for the fastest time. In this video, I'm going to try and break down exactly how Haig accomplished this world record time, from the use of bit clips to what is known as the delayed cutscene warp. I'm Ty for Press A, and this is how speedrunners beat Banjo Tooie in less than 30 minutes. Before we dive in, for legal reasons, I have to mention here that if you enjoy the kind of stuff that we do on this channel and aren't subscribed, then we'd really appreciate it if you did. Normally, I would prefer to wait until the end of the video before asking, but studies shows this works and helps remind people who meant to subscribe but forgot. Either way, thank you, and I hope you enjoy the video. The first thing to highlight is that most of the top speedrunners of Banjo Tooie play the Nintendo 64 Japanese version of the game. This is because the Japanese version saves about 9 seconds in the any percent category over the North American and PAL versions due to faster text boxes, as well as being allowed in the Japanese version to skip the cutscene when you first step into Wooden Hollow. For some reason, this cutscene can't be skipped in the other versions of the game. Only seconds into the run, we see the first skip executed, known as the Klungo cutscene skip, a skip discovered by a player known as Riptic. In a normal run, right at the very beginning of the game when walking into the main area of Spiral Mountain, there will be a cutscene that plays where Klungo runs into the tunnel, but it's possible to skip this cutscene by jumping around it, saving about 20 seconds. Speedrunner Garage Door Opener has a tutorial video on YouTube where he discusses this skip and many others used in this run in detail. But essentially, you want to stand in the vicinity of where these 2 little white dots are to the right of the first smaller rock, and from there do a backflip and move forward, making sure not to move too far to the left to trigger the cutscene, and then beak bust to land on this ledge or bigger rock, making sure to also not trigger the cutscene by falling off. I wanted to try the skip myself, and though it took me several tries, I eventually landed it. Once on the ledge or bigger rock, the best thing to do is talon trot and jump from the ledge towards the turbo trainers, which Haig does. He then grabs the turbo trainers to gain speed, grabs the nest of blue eggs here, and races to fight Klungo in the tunnel. He then takes out Klungo effortlessly, making sure to take enough damage during the fight to lower his health to 2, which you'll see why it's important a bit later. Haig also makes sure to perfectly land his last attack on Klungo, using the eggs he grabbed in Spiral Mountain, when he's in front of the entrance to Jingo Village, to save on time after the cutscene. Once in Jingo Village, the first thing Haig does is jump onto the red Jingo house to collect the Treble Clef, a new collectible in Banjo Tooie that gives 20 notes. Collecting this Treble Clef and other notes is important because in Banjo Tooie, notes are needed to learn new moves from jam jars, and there are 3 specific moves that will need to be learned to complete this run, the last move requiring 315 notes. Typically, you would need to have learned the grip grab move to get this Treble Clef, but as you might guess, you don't actually need that move. By standing at the back of the door frame on the very top line for maximum height, you can backflip and then beak bust to get onto the roof. It's important when doing this that you hold out from the house when backflipping, and then once Banjo flips and the soles of his feet are visible, that's the point when you then need to hold back into the house and beak bust, as beak busting while in the air provides the extra height needed to get on the roof. I tried this technique as well, and the timing is very tight, but after probably 20 tries, I was finally able to do it. But for speedrunners like Haig, they're able to do this in one go. From there, Haig visits King Jingling to get the first Jiggy, which, fun fact, will be the only Jiggy collected in this run, meaning we won't have to see Jiggy Wiggy. The reason for collecting this Jiggy is it opens up the path leading from Bottle's house to Wooden Hollow, which is where Haig needs to go. Haig then enters Bottle's house to get the goggles, an item that lets you zoom in and out in first-person view. Having the goggles will be important for executing some pretty complex glitches later on. After that, Haig uses a similar technique he used to get on the red Jinjo house to get onto this ledge here that leads to the plateau. Again, you would typically need to know the grip grab, but by backflipping and then holding up and beak busting just as Kazooie's head is pointing exactly straight forward and horizontal, you can get onto this ledge and make your way to the plateau much earlier. When in the plateau, Haig quickly activates the silo, which is used to get around the Isle of Hags much quicker than on foot, collects the notes on the signs and by the beehive, and then enters Gulch Mine without opening the level. To pull this off, you need to beak bust between the wooden frame of the level and the grate. There are various ways to execute this, but the easiest way according to Garage Door Opener is at a slanted angle. When moving forward at this angle, you'll eventually reach the point at which Banjo will walk over the place where he'll clip in, and that's exactly where you want to be when you beak bust. So the goal is to be very close to this point while on the wooden frame, jump and move up slightly to beak bust at this point for Banjo to clip through. If you move up too much, you'll land on the grate, and if you don't move up enough, you won't hit the exact point. I tested this out myself and it was surprisingly pretty easy. Once in Gulch Mine, Haig grabs the turbo trainers and heads to the water storage, making sure to grab the notes on this green glitter pile. In the water storage, he grabs the Treble Clef in the water and then proceeds to have the TNT box kill him in order to death warp, a common strategy used in Banjo Tooie and Kazooie speedrunning. Dying in a level means you will respawn back back at the entrance of the level, which saves on time backtracking. This is why Haig allowed Klungo to lower his health to 2, so that he would have low enough health to die from the TNT box and Death Warp. After respawning, Haig once again grabs the Turbo Trainers, activates the entrance warp, grabs the Globo closest to Wumba, and then enters Wumba's tent to transform into the detonator. From there, Haig warps back to the entrance and hops his way to the fuel depot, taking damage from Billy Bob before entering the fuel depot. Anytime a speedrunner intentionally takes damage, you can almost always bet it's for a future Death Warp. In the fuel depot, Haig grabs the 2 notes on the right side of the room and then detonates the TNT, releasing the Saucer of Peril closer to Witchyworld. We'll see why this is very important later. Haig then grabs the notes on the left side of the room and then performs another Death Warp, and this time, respawns leaving Wumba's tent, as that is where you respawn when you die as a transformation. Haig immediately goes back into Wumba's tent and turns back into Banjo and Kazooie. He then Talon trots to grab all the notes under the shack and the notes by Mumbo, then warps back from Mumbo's to the level entrance and exits the level, making sure to jump off the rope at the very top to save on time. Leaving Glitter Gulch Mine, Haig heads straight to Jam Jars near the level entrance to learn the first of 3 moves in this run, the Fire Eggs, a move that requires 45 notes to learn. He then makes his way up this coal pile and shoots the fire switch to gain access to Pine Grove, which is impressive given he never learned egg aiming from Jam Jars. In a normal run, you would learn egg aiming in Mayhem Temple, the first level of Banjo Tooie. This move allows Kazooie to aim eggs at enemies and switches instead of randomly shooting in a direction. But in this speedrun, Mayhem Temple is completely skipped, so speedrunners like Haig have to memorize the exact spot to stand in and direction to fire in to shoot the fire switch here without egg aiming. There are visual cues to help pull this off though, and Garage Door Opener has a tutorial YouTube video on this as well, so I won't go into too much detail, but you essentially want to Talon trot up the coal pile on the right side of where you see the 2 brightly lit rocks, jumping 4 times and then holding C right as you complete your 4th jump, and then letting go of C right and out of Talon trot. This will get you lined up almost perfectly to hit the switch. You then want to run forward down the pile to be almost at the spot where the camera turns down and then fire away. Again, Garage Door Opener has detailed tutorials on a lot of the tricks and skips used in this run, so I'd recommend checking out his videos if you want to try these yourself. I also tried this myself, but will admit I got lucky I was able to hit the switch. Okay, I did it! That I think was just a lot of luck though. So far, the skips and tricks used in this run haven't been too challenging, but from here on out, that is going to change drastically. Haig enters Pine Grove and grabs the underwater notes, and then learns the Grenade Eggs from Jam Jars, a move that requires 110 notes. He then grabs the notes on the nearby log and leaves Pine Grove, only to immediately re-enter the area. The reason for leaving and re-entering Pine Grove is to set up for what is called a bit clip, a very specific and powerful glitch that will be used to enter Witchyworld without unlocking the level. The Witchyworld early bit clip was first discovered by speedrunner Ringrush, and to set this up, you'll first need to enter the Pine Grove loading zone while using Talon Trot, and while doing this, you'll want to hold straight up and mash the R button. You need to hold straight up because you'll need to be walking forward when entering Pine Grove, and the reason for mashing the R button is to get some leg for this next part. When entering Pine Grove, the camera will pan up in 2 different ways. One way shows a little bit of sky above the Witchyworld sign, and the other shows a lot of sky above it. This is important to pay attention to, as to pull off the bit clip to enter Witchyworld early, there needs to be only a little bit of sky above the Witchyworld sign. If you enter Pine Grove and there's too much sky, the bit clip won't work, and you'll need to leave and re-enter again. My understanding is this is random whether you get a little bit or too much sky, and Haig was fortunate enough to get the right amount of sky in his run. If you have the right amount of sky like Haig did, then you'll want to continue to hold straight up and run into the Witchyworld gate, where you then let go of the Z button to get out of Talon Trot, and then let go of up after. Doing this should have Banjo facing forwards toward the gate and a little bit to the right. Now, it's here I should probably explain what a bit clip is. It's a bit complicated and quite technical, so much that the 8-Bit Beast has a 40-minute YouTube video explaining bit clips, which you should check out if you want to know more. But essentially, the floor in Banjo Tooie and Kazooie is entirely made up of triangles. The game uses a barycentric algorithm to tell if Banjo Tooie is above any triangle. However, if you're at very specific points on the seams of some triangles, the algorithm will fail to detect Banjo on either triangle adjacent to him, due to rounding error. This creates effective gaps in collision that you fall through. If you are over one of these floor gaps, which are about 0.001 units wide, then Banjo will start falling through the floor. If you pass through the floor in one frame, you can fall out of bounds. But if you are in the floor on a frame, then the game will detect it and eject Banjo upwards. How the ejecting mechanism works in specifically the Nintendo 64 version of Banjo Tooie is that there are some gaps which hook Banjo without ejecting him until he has enough speed to pass through in one frame. This makes bit clips more useful in the Nintendo 64 version of Banjo Tooie, as you can flutter out of them and beak bust to get back in bounds behind doors and walls, which is what speedrunners do to get into Witchyworld without unlocking the level. Precise accuracy is important in pulling off a bit clip, as moving even 0.00001 units too far in any direction means you will not be on the clip spot. But just as important is the direction/angle. And for this glitch, speedrunners use what is called twirly whirlies, a method that gives speedrunners the most precise directions. To complete a twirly whirly, you press C up and buffer either right or left on the joystick while you get into first person. Then the camera will continuously change 3 degrees per frame, and your goal is to pause on a specific frame to get a specific angle. Then you let go of all your inputs, unpause, get out of first person, then do whatever movement input is next in your setup, which which in Haig's run was a very precise jump and leg frame combination, which is why you see Haig shuffling through the eggs here, so that he can cause the right amount of leg needed. If you want to try this glitch yourself, then I recommend watching Speedrunner Asmi's tutorial video on YouTube, where he discusses the glitch in more detail and visual cues to look for when performing the glitch. In Witchyworld, Haig activates the entrance warp pad and then proceeds to collect notes throughout the level, including around the tent and the various attractions of Witchyworld. Once Haig collects the notes outside the Dodgem Dome, he warps back to the entrance of the level and enters Area 51, just barely avoiding an enemy attack and potentially ruining his run. From there, he collects the notes on the gate fence columns and climbs the pole here to jump and enter Terrydactyl Land, which in a normal run would involve using the claw clamber boots to walk up the yellow footprint on the wall. Except he's not fully in Terrydactyl Land, as there's a gate blocking the path to Oogle's Cave. Using the same strategy used again to Witchyworld early, Haig bit clips himself through the floor and then flutters and beak busts to get back in bounds on the other side of the gate. I won't get into the details of this glitch as I've already covered this for the Witchyworld early glitch, but Asmi has a tutorial video on performing this glitch as well if you want to try it yourself. However, that's not the only obstacle preventing you into getting into Terrydactyl Land, as glitching your way into Oogle's Cave will cause you to always be stuck there. So, speedrunners perform what is called the Oogle Escape to get into the main area of the level. By completing a frame-perfect jump upon exiting the loading zone, you can stay there without getting pushed back in. Once in this state, you then want to navigate to the left side and hug the wall so you can get stuck in a slow fall. You will then want to move forward enough to be stuck between the Unga Bunga's push radius and the wall, which from there you can just walk out. This is said to be easier to do while talon trotting, which Haig does. And all Haig does in Terrydactyl Land is collect the notes in a very specific path, which involves beak busting on the cliff here by the roar cage and landing down below by the pool without taking any damage. This is called the beak bust fall damage cancel, which is a bug with how Beak Buster works. It gives you invulnerability frames until you touch the ground again, which is why Banjo didn't take any damage falling from such a high height. Once Haig brings his total note count to 295, he swiftly exits the level, where at this point he is 26.7 seconds ahead of his personal best time. It was at this point in the run that Haig felt he could potentially achieve a world record. Leaving Terrydactyl Land, Haig collects the notes near the Cuckoo Cloud Land entrance and then the notes by Jam Jars here, bringing the total note count to 315, which is the amount needed to learn the third and final move in this run, the Clockwork Eggs, which are needed for the final fight. From there, Haig uses the silo to make his way back to the plateau and enters Gulch Mine the same way he did earlier in the run. Using the turbo trainers, Haig quickly makes his way to the fuel depot and then enters Witchyworld through the connected tunnel. He then perfectly aligns himself to fire a clockwork egg through the crack in the door into the Witchyworld side to set off the Saucer Apparel switch. Fun fact, most doors in Banjo Tooie have cracks in them because they're not placed symmetrically. With the Saucer Apparel switch set off, the Saucer cutscene is triggered, and it's during this cutscene Haig resets the game. And this is to set up what is called the Delayed Cutscene Warp, or DCW, a game-breaking technique first discovered and given its name by a glitch hunter called Chronicies. This is done by delaying the Saucer Apparel cutscene from the fuel storage by interrupting the cutscene by resetting the game, so that the cutscene doesn't save in the game's memory. That means the next cutscene you watch will now be stored in the memory, and it's that cutscene that will be played next time you enter the Gulch Mine fuel depot and send you to where the last cutscene was played, which another glitch hunter named Xcord learned can be used to warp to Haig 1. What's important to know is that performing DCW in this run involves having a completed file already, as you'll need replay mode unlocked in the game's main menu, a mode that allows you to replay any of the minigames or boss fights that you've triggered in your file, including the Haig 1 fight, which starts with the cutscene. So, by restarting the game during the Saucer cutscene and then selecting and watching the Haig 1 cutscene in replay mode, the Haig 1 cutscene now becomes the last cutscene stored. After the cutscene plays, all you have to do is quit replay mode and go back into your file, which Haig does. From there, he uses the silo in Jingo Village to get to the plateau, where he once again clips into Gulch Mine, grabs the turbo trainers, and runs to the fuel depot, where the Haig 1 cutscene is played. And suddenly, Haig is now fighting the final battle of the game. A battle that in a normal run would take close up to 17 hours to reach, is now reached in close to 20 minutes. At this point, Haig was already well on his way to achieving the world record. All he had to do was defeat the Haig 1 battle as fast as possible, which for speedrunners isn't hard, as they perfectly mapped out each movement throughout the battle. When it was all said and done, Haig achieved a time of 26 minutes and 57 seconds, the first sub 27-minute run ever, and thus setting a new world record, something that hasn't been done in over 3 years. A big part of Haig's success in this achievement can be attributed to his impressive execution of the bit clips, where he was 7.6 seconds ahead of his personal best time after bit clipping into Witchyworld, and 22.4 seconds ahead after bit clipping into Terrydactyl Land and leaving Oogle's Cave. And by the time Haig completed the delayed cutscene warp file enter, he was 45.6 seconds ahead of his personal best time, and on on track to beat Banjo Tooie in less than 27 minutes, allowing him the room to choke a bit in the last part of the run. But Haig doesn't choke, and he finishes the run 44.3 seconds ahead of his previous personal best time. It was a very impressive run, and a huge congratulations to you, Haig, if you're watching this video. Now the question is, will another speedrunner be able to set a new world record? And if so, how long until it happens? It's hard to say, but with speedrunners continually looking at opportunities to beat the game even faster, I have a feeling we'll see a faster time at some point. I want to give a big shout out to TSRStormed, who helped me a lot with making sure the information discussed in this video is accurate. TSRStormed is a Banjo-Kazooie speedrunner and glitch hunter, and he has a lot of cool videos on his YouTube channel, so definitely check out his channel if you're interested in Banjo-Kazooie speedruns and glitches. I also want to thank our A-button masters on Patreon: Logan Buchanan, Alexander Thompson, Nolan Filter, Marcus Vandergang, Real Backfish, Rebecca Lyons, Phoenix Lazuli, Dragoon, Dr. Nuck, Rooney4, Leburb, Puddles Megan, General Josher, Omo, Fossil, Koi 13, Darman, Ryan Levin, and Daniel Garrett. Thanks again, and catch you in the next video.